Now, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, has been getting a lot of grief for his foreign travel, but the trip that I'm probably worried most about is the one that Climate Change and Energy Minister Mr Bowen is going on this week to Dubai, to a dangerous but also farcical conference there that starts on Thursday. Now, let me explain why perhaps you should worry too. Bowen, as you know, is a global warming zealot who actually just got another smack of reality today. Reality check. Bowen is trying to stop us using reliable coal-fired electricity. As you know, he wants us to use lots and lots more wind and solar instead, and claims this is going to save you money.
Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy, and that includes when you include and count transmission and storage.
Yet your bills keep going up. And today, the head of our biggest energy producer, AGL, called out this total fantasy that Bowen is pushing, saying, well, actually, there's a bit of a misunderstanding at the moment where people say renewables will be cheaper and that will lead to cheaper generation costs. That's wrong. In the short term and the medium term, this will lead to higher costs. So Bowen is saying renewables are the cheapest, it's going to save you money. The guy who actually makes your electricity says, well, no, it will cost more. Who's telling the truth? Check your bills over the year. You'll find out who's been conning you. And that's the thing with this government, you know, it's so carried away with the ideology that the facts just don't seem to count. And so to this meeting in Dubai on Thursday, Bowen is off there to this latest big global warming conference called by the United Nations. These things, these meetings, annual, they're like a mass worship of the climate gods. And this one is the most over-the-top one yet. Guess how many people are flying there to tell each other that yes, renewables are good, yes, the planet is in crisis, and yes, people should cut emissions, maybe fly less, for instance. Maybe even have carbon passports with a limit on just how often they could fly. So how many did you think are flying to this conference in Dubai? Try 70,000. Which is about double the number that have gone to any previous UN global warming conferences. 70,000. It's an industry. And what a pack of total hypocrites. Joining me is the Tuesday panel, Will Kingston, host of Australiana, a weekly podcast from The Spectator Australia on politics and culture. And, on his debut, Alexander Volz, contributor to skynews.com.au, writer for The Spectator, and also, as it happens, a fine composer. Now, Will Kingston, 70,000 people flying to a conference in Dubai to work out ways to make the rest of us cut emissions. It sounds like an elaborate and stupid joke, but is it?
It is. It's interesting how virtual conferencing hasn't taken off amongst the climate crusading community, Andrew. I've actually done several virtual conferences over my career, and here's the thing. You can share information just as well. You can still make agreements. You can network to some extent. What you can't do is you can't hobnob with the global great and the good, and the social media posts don't look quite as sexy. And that's the thing. This is all about demonstrating your status amongst the global elite. This is all about being in the vicinity of Bill Gates. This is all about the show. This is all for show. And unfortunately, if this was really about saving the planet, this stuff would all be done on Zoom.
Alexander Volz, 70,000 people. How can you possibly justify that? If they all got to speak for a minute, you'd be there for ages.
Well, you certainly would, Andrew. And, you know, you've got to, I'm sure they're arguing it to themselves, that they've got to go over this first time. And we're still in the planning stages before we really cut down on all these emissions. No, I totally and utterly agree with what Will said. Hi, Will. Great to see you. And great to be on, Andrew, as well. It's just a colossal hypocritic move. So, you know, 70,000 people, I mean, that's more than most football games. Heavens above! I mean, what are these ideologues up to? This whole net zero push Andrew. I mean, this is not the national project that Australia needs. Forget about it as an international issue. It's not the national project that Australia needs. We shouldn't be sending our politicians over there to discuss these sorts of things that are, in fact, causing most of the issues that we have in this country economically, and some might even say culturally and educatively at the moment. So, no, 70,000, stay home, guys, do it over Zoom, and maybe even find something better to do with your time.
Well, like I say, it's a suggestion that it's an industry now. But, Will, you know what I find amazing? I mentioned that the head of our biggest power company, right, he directly contradicts the government's big line, He says, no, renewable energy is not cheaper. Costs will go up, not down. And it's almost ignored. I mean, the only way I got to hear about that quote, that it's actually more expensive, was literally the very last paragraph of one story in one newspaper, the Climate Change Crusading Sydney Morning Herald. The very last paragraph. At what stage do you think journalists of the left will fact-check the government on this claim and accept that renewables are too expensive and this revolution is a con?
Andrew, I don't think they will. I think the way that you phrased it in your intro, that this is about a quasi-religion, was right. And something which is a quasi-religion means that you don't actually really bother to look into the facts. But here's the thing. People can see their energy bills every week. They're not stupid, and they are feeling it in the hip pocket more and more. And so what you're seeing is just an increasing disconnect between the people who have to pay the energy bills and the people who are reporting on it and the people who should be regulating to make their energy bills cheaper. Unfortunately, this is just leading to that increased disconnect between the elites of our society and the people who are really struggling day to day to make ends meet.
Well, absolutely right. And then you get an academic pushing this case in the taxpayer-funded website, The Conversation, for a carbon passport to limit how far you can fly. So 70,000 people can go to Dubai to just sit there and have a jamboree. But carbon passports, I mean, ideas like this, what do you reckon, Alexander? Is this going to take off, so to speak?
Well, I certainly hope not, Andrew. I would be interested in asking the question, who's going to have jurisdiction over a carbon passport? Is it going to be the Commonwealth or is it going to be Davos? That would be something that I'd be very interested in working out. You can't keep curbing the liberties of the Australian people for these ideological reasons. They're not grounded in any sort of science or pragmatism. They're totally and utterly ideological. This is the textbook stuff of neo-Marxism. And back to your point about the journalists, one question that we should seriously be asking ourselves is how many of these journalists and how many of the corporations of these journalists have shares in renewable energy? I mean, is it time that we need to look at re-evaluating the code of ethics or whatever it is that the journalists follow to see if they do in fact need to declare their share interests? Politicians certainly do. So I don't know. I think that that's a practical measure that could be taken that would actually yield some good benefits for us all and would get to the heart of inaccurate and biased reporting.